Hello again. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you got some good practice yesterday with our surface area and volume formulas for spheres. Today, we're going to do a little practice with solving using those formulas. And so in this first problem, what we have is we want to find the volume of a sphere, but we only know the surface area of that sphere. So if we're given surface area, we have to recall the surface area formula is 4 pi r squared. Hopefully you took the opportunity to add that to your reference sheet. That would be helpful. And so since the surface area is 200, I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. That's equal to 4 pi r squared, where clearly here we're going to have to do some solving to find the radius r. That's our only unknown. So I'm going to do that in a couple steps. I'm going to first divide by 4 because I know that that's at least going to give me a somewhat nice number. For this case, this case, it will give me a nice number. In other cases, it might be a somewhat nice number. Okay, so 50 is equal to pi r squared. And this is where my numbers start to get a little less nice because I'm going to divide out the pi from each side. And I want to keep the unrounded answer in my calculator for this. So on my paper, I can write that that's about 15.92 when I divide that. But again, keeping that answer in its unrounded state in the calculator. Because the next step I want to do here is I have r squared and I want to solve for r. Well, what's the opposite of squaring something? It's taking a square root. So I'm going to have to take the square root of both sides here. In your calculator, what this is going to look like is you are going to take the square root of the answer, which remember you can pull up that option by either using second and then the button that has the negative symbol on it. That will recall your previous answer. Or if you have a calculator that lets you arrow up to your previous solution here that you got that 15.915 ... And plug it in under your radical, then we at least get the most accurate form of this answer, which for the radius means that we would get approximately 3. I'm going to do 989 because I would have to round that up to 99. And now still, I'm going to leave the unrounded version of this in my calculator because remember what we wanted to ultimately get to was the volume here. So now I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to recall my volume formula is 4/3 pi times the radius cubed. And I have to plug what I got, that r is about 3.989, into my formula here. Okay, so volume is equal to, I'm going to use that fraction feature of my calculator to get the 4/3 pi times about 3.989 cubed. But again, I'm going to, in my calculator, I'm going to use that answer option. Okay, so I'm just going to type exactly that into the calculator, making sure I use the pi key as well so we don't get any rounding there. And for this, I am getting that my volume is approximately 265.96 units cubed. Now, because I tried to save all of my rounding until this very last step, at least in my calculator, right here on my paper, I may have done a bit of rounding, but in my calculator, this should be the closest approximate answer, the 265.96. Okay, the second example we're going to do. What if we want to find surface area and all we know here is the volume? Okay, so now again, that volume formula, 4/3 pi r cubed, I'm going to have to solve for r again, but now I know that my volume is 350 pi. So I'm going to plug that in on the other side of my formula here, and we're going to solve for r. Now, one nice thing that happens here, and I'm going to actually do this in a slightly different order with my division, I'm going to divide out this pi first because I noticed something nice here is that my pi cancels out with the pi that was left in this volume. So sometimes that will happen, and that is kind of nice when it does. That means I have 350 is equal to 4/3 times the radius cubed. Now we're going to save that r cubed for the last step because I have to get rid of this 4/3 first. So you might remember that in order to get rid of multiplication here, we divide. And when we divide by a fraction, what we are actually doing here is multiplying by the reciprocal of 4/3. So by eliminating this on this side, you could see this. If you have the fraction feature in your calculator, by all means, plug that in using the fraction feature on your calculator. But what you might also see is that because this is 350 divided by a fraction, that we would take 350 and multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, that is a property of solving when we have fractions involved in our equation here. All right, so when we do that, and using the fraction feature in my calculator, all right, I get an answer that is still a fraction. I'm going to have it give that to me as a decimal because right now it's giving me 525 over 2 when I use the fraction feature of my calculator. So I'm just going to do that as a decimal here because that's a nice terminating decimal of 262.5. All right. So I didn't have to do any rounding. It's just a 0.5 decimal. But how do I undo this r cubed? Well, if you think back to the previous problem where something was squared, we took the square root. So the way I undo something that's cubed is I take a cubed root, okay? A cubed root. So again, the opposite of, say, x cubed, the opposite of that would be the cubed root of x, okay? And so it looks like a square root with that little 3 there. And if you've seen that before, if you remember that, that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to do that to both sides here. So we're going to take the cubed root on this side. We're going to take the cubed root of 262.5. In your calculator, the way we get to this cubed root right here is we're going to go to the math menu. And then you are going to see option number 4 gives you the cubed root and it allows you to plug something in. So we're going to choose that 4th option under the math menu and we're going to go ahead and type in that 262.5. Okay, so when I take the cubed root of this, I am getting 6.4028 and so on. Okay, or I guess, yeah, it kind of goes on. So that is my approximate radius. We're going to leave the unrounded version in the calculator just like we did with the last problem. So also, like the last problem, remember we wanted to find the surface area. So we are going to bring this up to our surface area formula now. We found R. We're going to plug it in its unrounded form right here for R. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 4 pi times that previous answer squared. And plugging exactly that in, I am getting that the surface area is approximately 515.18, and that would be units squared because it's an area. Okay, so this one's a little trickier because we have the fraction in here. I tried to make it a little simple for this example because those pi's reduced out, but keep in mind, if it's not in terms of pi, then you would have had to maybe taken 350 divided by pi to get an ugly number and then divided out that 4/3 and then taken the cube root. Okay, if you have questions about this, I know this is a tricky problem, so you just let me know if you need any help.